Yeah, I know I'm in between today, the conference, and your home, essentially, so I make it quick. No, I have 25 slides. Some of you who went to my trainings know I'm a quick speaker, so I try to behave today. I have some good news, some bad news. Let's start with the bad news. My presentation is all about the current decade, and that's, I mean, we're only 3 years in, but we already realized it's not the, it's a very challenging decade, let's say. In 2018, John Mauldin, he wrote books and articles about the debt crisis, and he said essentially in 2018 that the 2020s, this decade, might be the worst decade in history. I mean, he was focusing on debt, but I mean, seriously, boy, he was quite on track with that. Seriously, he talks about the Great Reset. That's one of his books, where it's all about nullifying the debts, that kind of stuff. So it's yeah, it's interesting read, but yeah. All right, but that was his forecast essentially. So there I was getting curious, and I was looking up essentially what happened in 2010, in the 2010s essentially. And I mean, I asked Google Bard, to be honest, and give me a list of keywords about the 2010s essentially, came up with the keywords here. It's actually okay. I mean, 2010 was about globalization, there was some I mean, the Syrian war, there was some crisis, ISIS, but in general it was okay. I mean, the pandemic started, but most of it was mixed, it was just a decade as most before, I would say. Nothing too bad. And when I asked Google Bard, hey, give me keywords for the 2020s, 3 years in, I got something like this: crisis, disruption, war, inequality, geopolitical crisis. There's a keyword here, democracy, but it's all about, I believe, democratic erosion or something. So it's not even that one is not good here in this context. So all negative terms, all about essentially the 2020s, 3 years in. So then I started Googling around, and I was essentially Googling. I found this question on Reddit. Anybody here knows Reddit? Yeah, okay, most of us, okay. So what if 2020, that's a question from 2 years ago in 2020, what if 2020 isn't a bad year, but it's the start of a bad decade? There was a question essentially in 2020. So, I mean, those who know Reddit know these answers popping up now. The first one was not too bad. The first one was like, get help, okay? Seriously, the first answer was, get help. There's people who are interested in you and they want to help you, like Suicide Prevention Lifeline or Cemeterians and so on. Just get help. And the second answer, this is no kidding, the second answer was like, then I picked the wrong decade to stop sniffing glue. I said it's about glue and sniffing glue, it's some people know. So that's a typical Reddit answer, actually. So, and they kept going like this, right? So lots of these answers, and like, oh God, I can't do this in the conference. So I kept going, said, okay, Nostradamus, the great predictor of 1500 or something. And so what is Nostradamus predicting for this decade, essentially? First of all, he said this timeline between 2022 and 2041 is the last period in world history when a global armed conflict can be unleashed. What does it mean? Is it all done afterwards? Are we all killed? Or what is it? Right? All peaceful? We don't know. Couple of funny things here. The threat of changing the Earth's orbit under the influence of cosmic factors, okay? So maybe, I mean, with 3 months left in this year, maybe, we don't know, right? Could be. Major man-made and ecological disasters in the US and Italy. Okay, US I get, but why Italy? Come on, tell us. Stuff like that. A manned flight here, one of the last ones, 2028, a manned flight to Venus. There was actually a guy who planned manned flight to Venus, but it was the same guy who planned these trips to Titanic. So I believe there's a, I mean, he got killed actually in this sub boat. Yeah, so that's not sure. But there's actually a website where they collect facts, what will happen with a high probability, because we already know. For example, Romania will adopt the euro within the next years, essentially. So that's a fact that will happen. I mean, there might be something coming in between, right? You never know, but there's a 99% chance, I said at least. Increased automation of banking, yeah, I believe that banking will further automate. Close approach of the near-Earth asteroid Apophis. In we only know by 2004, 2006 that the meteor will not hit us. There was actually a very relatively high probability of 2 or 3% that the asteroid or whatever, the meteor comes actually very close to the Earth and might even hit Earth essentially. It was relatively large. Could have ended this decade somehow. The other one was interesting was Jupiter's great red spot is disappearing. We know that already, so within the next 8 or 9 years it will be gone. So last chance, get your telescope and really watch it last time. Hard to see, by the way. The wreck of the Titanic is decomposed, so if you really want to go to Venus or to Titanic, now is the time. Find a provider for that. Human-like AI is a reality. I could imagine that. Gets me to a quick poll. So there's this talk about generative AI, right? OpenAI or ChatGPT and so on, or Google Bard. So who believes that generative AI will generate a raw data vault by 2029? Anybody here believes that? Okay, actually a few people. Cool. Yeah, so I truly believe that as well. We'll see, right? So maybe next year or 2 years from now, we never know. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. So how can we fix the future? What can we do essentially with this misery of this decade essentially? And remember, we're only 3 years into this. There's more to come, right? Yeah, right. Don't know essentially. How can we fix the future? And in my opinion, it doesn't matter. I don't care if the thing is this. I don't waste my time and energy on something I can't fix, which is not under my control essentially. And I can't change the future. So to be honest, even if I would know that the Earth will leave the orbit of this sun system, well, I can't change it. I have to live with it. I have to find better opportunities underground maybe or something, but we have to live with that fact somehow. And maybe, I'm not sure if we have a chance, but maybe there is a chance. So, I don't know. We can't control it, so we don't need to discuss it even, right? That's one thing. The other thing is, don't be scared. So it doesn't matter if the economy is in an upturn or downturn, it doesn't matter, there's opportunities everywhere. So no matter in which environment you are, there's still plenty of opportunities, and the goal is essentially to find those opportunities even in a declining or increasing economy. That doesn't matter. So I wouldn't be scared if there's a lot of talk about a recession in Germany, for example. So be it. I mean, data is always in demand, so it doesn't matter if it's in a downturn or upturn. Companies, organizations need reports or data-driven solutions. That's another fact. And what I like to emphasize here, or what I like to focus on, is really something that we can control. That's the data warehouse. I mean, we should focus on the data warehouse, on the data-driven solution that we build, because that's where we can shape the future for our context, essentially, right? And yeah, because we can't predict the future, so I'm talking about bad stuff here at the moment all the time, but maybe tomorrow it's economy's going up, the recession in Germany is over in other countries, so maybe it's just shifting and changing the other way around. Or getting worse, we never know, right? So I don't predict anything. And those people who know me, I made some fun always predicting political stuff, and I have been always wrong, right? In every case. All right, so which means that I want to be ready for all the options essentially. In either way it goes, up or down, I want to be ready essentially. And that's why I want to talk about scaling data vault solutions. And scaling here means not just scaling up, but also scaling down in that case. So the first thing is, we see a lot of projects where they use data vault or introduce data vault to scale up their efforts. So it's all about, in many cases really, in many projects that we deal with, it's about creating more reports, dealing with or ingesting more data, producing more information, getting more team members into the team, scaling up team sizes, scaling up multiple teams, increasing the budget because they want more solutions all the time and so on. So it's always scaling up. For example, we have a success story online where we had a project at Beerenberg, and Beerenberg was essentially scaling up within 2 years from 7 people initially, that was the initial setup for the project, up to 20 or 25 people something, within roughly 2 years. The scaling didn't happen in a linear fashion. We built the first solution with those 7 people, and then in the last year maybe, or last half year, they scaled up because they need more and more essentially. So they scaled it up. The timelines, I'm not 100% sure on that one, should be roughly 2016 and 2018 essentially. But then they had the problem that the economic environment changed. So essentially, Beerenberg was part of the business model is on IPOs, and they ended up in budget constraints because the IPOs went down, the number of IPOs in that period. So they scaled down the teams, really down to 2 people. who were maintaining and running the system, there was no further development in that sense. They just kept the system running and that's it. Worked for them. They later scaled up again. So you can really scale up and down these teams depending on your budgets, your requirements, and so on. And from my perspective, I want to share some key success factors. I believe there are more, so if you want to share some more, it would be great for the Q&A essentially. But I want to share just some of my key success factors for scaling up or down. It doesn't matter in which direction essentially. One is capturing knowledge, another one is establishing and following standards, automating nearly everything, whatever it means, stay focused, and then constantly improve. So first of all, at Scalefree, but also at clients, we early on started capturing knowledge. So one of the first systems we set up internally was the wiki system, essentially, where we documented processes, for example, where we documented solutions, documented customers, and so on. And we did that because people leave the organization. They leave the organization. With that, they go and take the knowledge, essentially. So we want to capture, codify this knowledge. When they leave, that you have at least a chance or some knowledge is inside the organization still. So we codify the knowledge. It doesn't have to be a wiki, it could be documentation, could be internal trainings that people conduct essentially to support your scaling efforts. Because without documentation, the scaling is let's say it's a rough exercise essentially. Think about this: when you operate a car and you have no formal training how to deal with a car, and you have no manual to at least read how to operate a car, right? It might work, but then think about millions of people driving cars without any proper training, without manuals, and all of a sudden, there are countries where they have a crazy driving style, but they even have trainings, right? So that's a problem. So you just scale up something where people have no freaking idea how to operate a car. I don't name any countries here, but I believe. The other thing is, we see this data mesh, for example, at the moment, and everybody's like, okay, this is the next silver bullet, let's go for the data mesh. But in the end, if you want to distribute the responsibilities for building data solutions, it's all about standards. So you can't distribute without standards. That's at least my opinion or my experience. So we need to have essentially standards in place for scaling up, for having multiple projects running, for increasing team sizes. Because otherwise, if you scale up without proper standards, that's the definition of chaos. I mean, it should be written in the lexicon essentially, do or something, right? So and the same is when you scale down. If you have no standards in place, no documentation in place, it's also a loss of knowledge again. So that's also what you want to make sure that you have standards in place before you scale down or up. But also we need to understand that standards need time to evolve. So first of all, you will need to introduce those standards when you set your project up, but also the standards need to be adjusted according to maybe changing environments as well. When you introduce more automation, when stuff in the environment of your context will change, you have to adjust the standards as well. Then automate nearly everything. So, today we generate data vaults or enterprise database systems based on data vault using metadata-driven automation tools. I mean, initially when we started Scalefree, we were introducing at client projects, introducing data vault very often in a manual fashion. First of all, that was back in 2016. There was a few automation tools, but not today's scenario, right? And it was a good learning exercise to walk a client through the process of loading and uplink satellites and so on. It was a good learning exercise. But nowadays, we even start with automation tools. Automation tools is the key to scale up essentially. But also you want to think about automating the deployments, automate testing, automate everything. However, also be pragmatic. So we automate the easy 80%. The other 20%, we have seen scenarios where organizations try to automate just everything with a limited set of patterns. I wouldn't do it. So automate, focus on the easy 80% and do the rest later, essentially. That's the idea. So be pragmatic in your automation efforts. Right, and then stay focused. So the job is essentially to build a data warehouse, right? That's what your intention is or what your target is. And not a cloud with unicorns eating rainbows and pooping candy like this one here, right? Seriously, I'm not sure what these candies are, to be honest. I believe they're sugar-based. But these are $10. So if you need a unicorn poop, then that's $10, not 5 million or something, or 10 million bucks or something that you need to spend, right? You can order online on this website. I just found this one. I'm not sure. So some people believe in unicorns, some not. If you don't believe in unicorns, I wonder what this is, but it's actually written there. A little bit of poop in every bite. All right. So That's often forgotten in good times, when organizations build some solution where, I mean, there's everything in there and lots of features, and we have seen systems where the system was, let's give you an example, real-time based system, but no user needed real-time. It was never on the list, it was never on the requirements, nobody cared. But the system was still built on real-time scenarios because the guys who built the system loved the idea, so let's go for it. Sadly, we often get reminded the hard way in bad times. So when the bad times come, when budget constraints come in, you have to maintain this cloud of unicorns eating rainbows, essentially. That's the challenge. Yeah, so just order this $10 and that's got you the sweets, essentially. And constantly improve. So no matter what you're doing at the moment, it's good for the moment, but when you're, first of all, you need to get there, so we want to improve all the time to get better and better over time. But then if your environment changes, what you have done yesterday and change that might be better today, because when your environment changes, you might have to adjust your practices, your processes to the new environment as well. Saving costs or being more innovative and so on. So it might change back and forth depending on the environment, how it changes essentially. So by constantly improving, I'm adjusting my processes, my development processes, my practices to the environment around me essentially. That's the basic guide. It can go back and forth because that's how economies also go back and forth essentially. Now, the good news. Finally. So the thing is this, it's all about scaling. Data was great for scaling, both directions. We don't know in which direction it goes, right? Now here's one thing. There was an article in 1969, and let me read this. It's about environmental disasters. The trouble with almost all environmental problems, says Paul R. Ehrlich, the population biologist, is that by the time we have enough evidence to convince people, you're dead. Now, we must realize that unless we are extremely lucky, everybody will disappear in a cloud of blue steam in 20 years. So let me make the numbers. 69 plus 20 years, you're all extremely lucky. Right, perfect. That's it. Any comments, any questions, any feedback you want to share? Maybe other factors, what you would suggest essentially is important for scaling up, scaling down? Because I'm done. Not too bad.